next few minutes, the UN's mediator in the Syrian conflict is expected to announce when the next round of talks aimed at ending 5 years of war will happen later this week. Things were delayed because of a heated dispute over who will represent the fractured Syrian opposition when it meets with representatives from the Syrian government. On Sunday, US Secretary of State John Kerry said he wanted clarity on when the talks will take place within 48 hours. Simon McGregor Wood joins us from London now with more. Simon, the peace talks have been delayed. Tell us a little bit more about this dispute. Why is it proving so difficult to get everyone together in Geneva?
Well, I think there are two main reasons. The one that seems to be the principal block on this process convening, it should have started on Monday, today in Geneva, has been these ongoing disagreements about who should make up the composition of the opposition parties, the opposition delegates, if you like, who will attend this session and negotiate what we hope is this transition to a new Syria. There have been lots of different names suggested. There's a Saudi, Sunni-backed official opposition that was agreed last month in Riyadh. But to that list, there have been all sorts of objections from the Russians and the Iranians and, of course, from the Assad regime itself. The Russians want to see greater representation from the Kurds. And, of course, the Assad regime has all sorts of views about who should and shouldn't attend these talks. So, really, this disagreement about who should go to Geneva has broken down both into an internal dispute amongst the groups themselves and the Assad regime, but also it's very much a question of the regional powers and the world powers wanting their own people, the people that they sponsor, the people that they want to represent the opposition at the table. And this is really the principal cause for this delay. And it's not resolved yet.
Yeah, and speaking of those should and shouldn'ts, Turkey's foreign minister says any participation with Kurdish forces like the PYD would be dangerous, but the US and others have supported them in the fight against Daesh. So how will Turkey negotiate the participation of PYD should they be part of this peace process?
Well, that's going to be a very difficult one for the Turks to resolve for themselves. Very clearly, today in Ankara, the foreign minister was quite specific, wasn't he, in his talks with the European Foreign Policy Chief, Ms. Mogherini, saying if there's any invitation of the YPG and other groups that, of course, the Turkish government considered to be terrorist and linked with the PKK, with whom they have their own long-running dispute, that would fatally compromise the process. And yet, on the other side, we understand that the Kurds field an army that is supported both by the Americans and other Western powers, and also the Russians, and they are proving themselves to be a very effective force in the ongoing fight against Daesh. So there are many reasons that the international players want some sort of Kurdish representation, but of course this is very, very difficult for the Turks to manage. My bet would be that eventually, if this is to be an inclusive process, which is what Ms. Mogherini said today in Ankara it needs to be, there will be some kind of Kurdish representation. Whether or not the Turks will have sit face to face across the same table, I think that'll be a different question.
OK, Simon McGregor Wood in London there. It's going to be an interesting afternoon indeed. Thank you for your time.